And we are live. Hey, everybody, this is Jeff, and this is Jeff Talks RPGs. Today, we are discussing being a professional DM, and I've got Megan Hardy and Beth the Bard with me today, two professional DMs who are do this full time, basically. Correct, ladies?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So, Megan, let's introduce you. Tell me a little about yourself and how you got involved in Dungeons and Dragons.
My husband got me into the game, and we played together kind of as a family with friends. He ended up getting downsized from his job of over a decade, and we were suddenly left with how do we kind of make ends meet. And I had homeschooled, so I knew of this site, Outschool, and I applied to work for them, and I kind of had the idea of doing Dungeons and Dragons on there. It was kind of like, okay, maybe this will work. And it sort of took off, and now he's finishing up getting his college degree, and I do this full time, and it's kind of, that is how it happened.
That's very cool. And Beth, how about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am so sorry, hold on, responding to okay, sorry, I can't, ADHD, I can only do like one thing at a time. So okay, hi, I'm Beth the Bard. I am the writer of She is the Ancient, gender bent Curse of Strahd guidebook on DM's Guild. Just hit gold 2 days ago.
It's got a gold badge on the cover now. Congratulations.
It is like amazing. Just saying.
Thank you. Yeah, and so I'm, in the process of trying to be more of a DM's Guild presence. That's like, new career goals and stuff. But yeah, I'm also a full-time dungeon master. I work with kids full-time because kids are amazing, and they just make everything feel really worth it all the time. And I got into D&D a few years ago. I think I've told this story before somewhere anyways. Big Bang Theory introduced me to it in my adulthood. And then Stranger Things, I was like, that's it. I want to be a nerd so bad. So I went and got the kit, and I couldn't figure it out for like 6 months. And then eventually I figured it out, and now I'm here. And I love it.
What's funny is Stranger Things is when I was playing D&D. It's like the era that I grew up playing the game. So
my daughter got into it by watching. Like, we've been trying to get her into it, and she got into it some. But she played the games with friends, but that took off with her. Like, and so it's like the show about the kids in the 80s playing D&D has got a new generation playing D&D now.
That was me. I was the nerdy 80s kid, and look what we've started, right? So Megan, you started playing 5th edition, or did you start before that?
5th edition.
Yeah, that's where a lot of people started playing, because it's such an easy edition to learn. I was, like I said, playing in the 80s, and then probably quit when 3rd edition came out, and then hadn't played until 5th edition came out. And I played just a little bit of, was there 4.5 or was it 4th edition?
I've heard excellent things about 4th edition. It
was really crunchy. Lots of stuff that you can do to, lots of things you had to worry about. And so 5th edition had just come out, and we had started our campaign, finishing up 4th edition, and then we bought all the 5th edition books, and then that's when I started DMing and writing. My brother was like, hey, there's some guys at my work that are playing D&D. You want to join? I'm like, I was like 46 or 45 at the time, and I'm like, it's kind of a kid's game, but hey, it's a bunch of guys hanging out, having fun. I'll give it a try. And then just fell right back into it. We've been playing for 6 years now. So yeah, we play, once a month, if not more. We were playing during COVID every Tuesday night for a couple hours, went through the Tiamat, the Horde of the Dragon Queen books, finished that up. That was a great book, great game. I liked it because it was fairly linear. It just seemed like it was easy for the DM to run, easy for the players to keep track of, especially over a virtual experience. Whereas now we're playing around with the Frost Maiden, and we've got like 10 quests we could be going on at any time. But my DM, Casey Bax, is doing a great job of keeping us wrangled, and he puts out every time we have a game, he puts out a little newsletter. It says, this is what you've done, this is what's going on in I forget what town we're in, 10 Towns or whatever, part of the 10 Towns. These are the quests you've taken on. It keeps it fresh in our minds, because if you go a month, it's easy to lose track of where you were.
Well, even a week between, I found that, so I do something similar where I really love making websites. It's like a side hobby of mine. And so I create a private web page for each group that I run for, because at any given time, I'm running 4 to 11 sessions a week with different groups. And so it's like, I need it all organized for myself. And so I'll create a web page on one of my sites that is password protected. Only those kids have access to it. And I just keep everything listed. It's like, here's where we've explored. These are the maps you found. Here's the magical items. Here's like information about each of your characters, links to your character sheets, things like that. Because otherwise, even just week to week, they're like, what did we do last week? Where did we leave off? And they're like,
Yeah, I have a private Discord server that I keep for me. Like, I'm the only person on it.
Smart.
And I make notes at the end of like every class, and I can do it while I'm doing the things, because I run a little bit more. Like my sessions with kids usually last about 90 minutes. So these are like really short sessions with what I'm doing.
That's what I do
have
too.
about 30 classes a week.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it's a lot. So I have this huge sheet going and a channel for each of the classes.
How do you not get burned out? I'm like, 11 is like my cap. I'm like, I'm tired.
Once again, a full-time job, like for my family. Kind of our solo movement right now. But honestly, a lot of the kids, I am like, there'll be multiple like kids that are going to maybe like in 2 or 3 of my classes, and I don't know. I just kind of connected with them, and Saturdays can be a little rough. Not going to lie. But
that's my rough day.
Yeah, it's like, you get up and like, I am at my computer and at 7 a.m. and I will leave my computer at after 8 p.m. And then I just go to my chill place afterward.
So
I am like amazed. Wow.
That's pretty.
I don't know if it's a
amazing.
good thing or just a sign of like, I don't know. Lack of the ability to sleep. Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay, so let's start out with, how did you each find these positions, and what you're both teaching for out school, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Part-time out school for me.
Okay. And then part-time with the actual school district, Beth?
Yes. Yeah. So between about 3 different places I'm working, it makes a full-time job.
Okay. How did you find these jobs, these positions as professional DMs?
I just knew about Our School as a site because my kids had used it. They had taken some history courses and things like that on there. And so I knew it existed. And my husband had been laid off after over a decade at his job, downsized. And we were just like scrambling, what do we do? And he needed to go back and get a degree or something, so we didn't find ourselves in the same situation. And so I'm like, well, I could apply here, and I applied. And at least when I joined Our Schools, you had to kind of propose class ideas that they thought were going to be new and kind of inventive. And so I said, well, what about Dungeons and Dragons? It's just something. And they kind of liked it. And then I did it, and it took off. And I did get all help from people within Nerdarchy and things like that. Nerdarchy guys are amazing.
You're also a columnist for Nerdarchy, is that right?
I did that for a while. I haven't done it for quite a bit because of those 30 classes that I mentioned. Time is a little limited. But yeah, so I did do that for a little bit. I wrote a few articles for them and just things of that nature. That was basically me. Beth can go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Beth.
Question was,
how did you get involved? How did you find these jobs?
Yeah, so for me, I've got 4 kids. We were living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Seattle. Like, my partner's income was not doing it anymore, kept raising the rent, and we're like, oh, cool. I gotta go do something. I gotta go do something now. And I homeschool my older kids. My younger ones are still too young, but I homeschool my older ones. And so I'm bringing them to the homeschool resource center. And I was like, hey, what about D&D classes? And they're like, what? That's not that's not educational and stuff. I'm like, I can make it. And also it secretly is, and I'll show you how. And they gave me a chance. And then, I turned to out school when I was like, hey, summer is coming up and I should probably look into having a job during the summer as well. so yeah, just kind of bringing it up. They were, receptive to it, and it became really popular. It is like, it's a very popular series of classes at that resource center. So yeah.
So is this out school, is that in every state?
It's every nation,
worldwide.
basically. It's
Yeah.
worldwide.
So worldwide, so
Mhm.
someone in Missouri could actually reach out and try and do this too.
Oh yeah.
That's where I am.
We usually get, I mean, I'm not speaking for Beth, but like I will get a lot of like classes, students in Canada and students in
Okay,
California.
so it's not
Australia.
just
Yeah,
I
a lot of
see.
Australian students,
Okay.
English, Irish, like you kind of India, like you basically, if they can get online, they can get on out school pretty much.
I've
I see.
got
So
every one of
okay.
my classes has kids from different parts of the planet. Yeah. It's really cool.
That is really
It's
cool
fun.
because as a youngster, I would hear Australian accents on TV, and actually never speak with an Australian person or someone from India or Ireland, and they're doing it now just via virtual tabletop or gaming, which is awesome.
And it doesn't really face the kids anymore. Like like I think growing up, if I was like talking to somebody from another country, it'd be like this experience. And
Right.
it's like
My kids don't
you're-
care. They're like,
Yeah.
yeah, Finn's Australian. It's cool. It's like,
I
that was wild to me as a kid. Like I had
Yeah.
a pen pal and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And
mean, right? And then it's like no big deal. But I will say this, I've become really good at telling difference between accents, which I am really proud of. Like I can tell the New Zealand and Australian. Yeah, it's like that's the coolest thing. So like, oh yeah, they're from Northern England totally. And I'm trying not to like
same. I'll be like, oh, you're even like, I'm like, you're Canadian, aren't you? Like I can just tell.
So okay, having taught these other countries, can you pick up on accents and actually do them yourselves?
no, not at all.
No.
Yeah, me neither. I'll start a character with like an Australian accent and it'll veer off to like an Arnold Schwarzenegger at the end. It's horrible.
Every accent I do goes Russian. And no matter
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do, it
I can
becomes
only
Russian.
do Russian. I can only, and I don't even, it's probably not even real proper, but I'm
Oh, I
like,
know.
this
Right.
is the greatest Russian accent ever. I just know it.
But I don't know why but I think also for kids, and I think that's one thing we kind of as DMs are like thinking, I got to do all the accents and do this. If you can focus on accents, you can also just focus on enthusiasm and the emotion of the character. And I think it carries the same weight as a good accent.
They talk like
And
this,
as a
they
DM,
move their
you don't
hands
have
up
to
like
like
this, and they really talk fast.
Yeah. So you don't have to have the perfect accent. You just have to have kind of maybe the personality down and use that as the accent. Because I like see a lot of DMs like, well, can't do it like this and I can't do the voices like that. I mean, you can still be a really good DM.
Yeah. My issue with NPCs is if I give them an accent, I forget what the accent is the next game. So
Thank you.
It's a different.
Same, which kids, it's fine with kids, but now that I do live stream shows, I'm like, I apologize, audience. This will not sound the same as it did last week because
Right.
I don't remember what I did and I'm not going to go back and look. So,
And then also
right.
like you get an NPC that you weren't expecting to have as an NPC and you have to quickly come up with a voice. Like I had one group that they were supposed to go through, well, it's Iceland, yeah, but they're going through the mines and the kobolds there, but they were collecting the kobolds and they wanted to make them all NPCs. So instead of that, I made a couple of 3 kobolds and trench coats for them as NPCs. So I had to do the voices for that. And
yes,
they ended up being a monk and they were Tug, Hug, and Bug.
Tug, Hug, and Bug.
And they would, this group of kids would have died for those kobolds. I'm just saying.
I've got Boblin the Goblin in a campaign right now in
that's a
Lost
good-
Mine. And they're like gathering all the goblins together to like fight the monarchy and everything. And so now we've got Boblin the Goblin and Dora and Diego are our other main goblins.
Kids love hordes of creatures. Like they will collect creatures like nobody's business. Like everything will be a potential friend. And it's like the friend. So you're in Avernus. There's a devil in front of you. Can I roll persuasion? That's just basically it.
Yep. Oh, I see a question. Wait.
Is there a question?
What is the biggest challenge you faced since becoming a professional dungeon master with paid classes or groups? Not having enough time.
That
I get more
balancing
requests than I have time for.
yes, and balancing personalities of the kids sometimes.
Oh my gosh.
When
Yeah.
you have that one really dominant personality, and because
And then really non-dominant personalities. And it's like,
Mhm.
come on. It's safe.
So getting to that, you spend 90 minutes on the game, right? You play for 90 minutes, but basically is what your games are. How much prep time do you put in before that? And then how much time do you spend after that collecting all the notes, filled out your discords, your web pages, or whatnot?
That is a good question.
it depends on the game and the group and where they are. It does vary. I can spend a good deal of time like prepping, or I could be like going 5 minutes in and we're good to go because we were just picking up with the combat and I had everything else prepped right after that.
Mhm.
You're not going to
Same.
prep the same amount every time. There isn't, I mean, there's no standard formula for it. The most I usually prep might be half hour to an hour, depending on what's going on. Like if it's a new class and they're doing something really big, I will try to do it. Like I have one group that kind of sort of got themselves into the astral plane. And so we're doing very off. I have to spend a lot of time prepping for them because they are doing something like I wasn't prepared for at all. I'm trying to make sure they have the proper encounters and all of that. But if it's like a module or a campaign I've run a million times over, the prep time is going to be a lot less.
Right.
I'm not meaning to talk more like if
Oh no, this is exactly the same. Like I've had groups where I've spent 2 hours or more prepping for a 1.5 hour session
Mhm.
before for certain groups and certain stories, and they went in a totally different direction, or they just like I have certain groups like they won't fight anything, and so I have to
Mhm.
prepare a totally different style story for them, which works for me. I'm role play focused anyways. And then other times like my Curse of Strahd campaigns, like I run She is the Ancient for teenagers, and I don't have to prep anything for that. I just open up Zoom and I'm ready to go. It's like, all right, what are you guys doing? Because it's gonna be wild. And I follow them. And then I spend probably an hour at the end of a day. I don't have time between sessions. I literally have 1 to 4 minutes between sessions
Mhm.
because I book them back to back to back to get through my day. And so then at the end of everything, I spend minimum of an hour kind of organizing everything that happened. And I write everything down like digital notebook as I go so that I can be like, oh yeah, that happened.
Yeah, you have to be willing to take notes while you go with this because I think, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there.
Oh no.
It does transition really fast because I'm the same way. My classes tend to book right after each other for when I have a few days in the week, which are I might have an hour between classes. Those are my good days. But on like I was mentioning earlier before we started, Saturdays, it's like boom, boom, I have to have it ready to go. And then like if you've done something long enough, like the fun, like your She is Ancient is your kind of baby, you wrote that, you have it down pat. I have a fun adventure like 6-week course. I have done it so many times that I don't have to prep for it. I just kind of know, okay, they're in this session. This is kind of where they are. Just double check and we're good to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So
It's a lot of work.
Totally depends.
Yeah. People think being a professional DM, all you have to do is run the game, but there's the prep time and there's the follow up, making sure that you're staying on track with everything
and then
making
all
sure.
the email correspondences.
A lot.
So many.
Okay. What
so
is
many.
that then? What do you hear? What's in the emails?
I feel like I spend more time responding to messages and emails and things between sessions than I actually do in sessions sometimes.
Is that from the students and players?
Parents
Students and parents.
Parents.
Yeah. I get a lot of the students that'll be like, oh, can I do this? Can I do this? They want to show me things. I'm like, yeah, that's amazing. Or like, hey, can you help me build a ground worm character? And I'm like, absolutely. Why not?
I'm kind of lucky because my husband, he loves building things. So I have one person like wanted to be, can I be a dry erase? And I'll be just like, Ellis, can you take care of that and build this erase for me? He's like, oh yeah, I totally can do that. he's come up with a bunch of homebrew races now for students randomly. I had one student, and I kid you not, they wanted to be an awakened pineapple. That was their whole goal, and he didn't.
Because of Steven Universe, probably,
Mhm.
right? That's
Yeah. And I try not to say no to things like that because like this is like their creativity, and like a lot of times, especially with COVID lately, I mean, with everything that's happened in the past few years, they don't have a lot of control. Like if it's been rough on us, it's been a lot rougher on them.
If you want to be an awakened pineapple, you be an awakened pineapple.
Yeah, just be what you want to be.
Yep. That's good. That's great for, especially, for kids, but it's great for anybody who's playing the game. I want to be a unicorn princess. You're going to be a unicorn princess. We're going to figure that out. I like your cat there, Megan. That's
yes. This is Emberly behind me.
Today we created, in one of my classes, we created Princess Puff, who wears puff sleeves, and she's a rogue, and she keeps her daggers hidden in there. Mm-hmm. And she's really like, she's automatically got like that stealth sneak attack stuff because she's like, oh, I'm like a little princess, and like,
yeah.
So that's
awesome. I have the scariest,
our favorite character so far.
The scariest character I have is a student who plays a tiny little elf folk rogue who talks with a Disney voice, and he's an assassin rogue. And we just decided he gets advantage on intimidation checks because it is genuinely more terrifying than the biggest edgelord I've ever seen. Like it is like that. Yeah. So
yeah, back when I was a kid playing the game, I feel like I had more imagination than I do as an adult playing the game. I don't know. I just spent a lot more time thinking about my character and trying to develop them. I mean, I was a nerd back then. I was rolling up characters all the time, going through the player's handbook, spending my gold, trying to figure out the best starting character and coming up with new magic items, that type of thing. I definitely feel different now about the game than I did then. I don't know if you've got this. Well, you all started in 5th edition, so you didn't have that, but you're seeing that with your.
I was saying my
students.
kids and students, because for kids, I'm sure you guys also played D&D outside of work. Mm-hmm. Yeah, or like we still play. I'm like, oh, I'm done working. I'm exhausted. Let's do exactly what I do for work, but at the kitchen table now. So
yeah, and you're kind of like just begging anybody else in the family to DM once.
So there is another question. There's another question out there, but I do want to ask both of you: have you ever heard of Sly Flourish's Lazy Dungeon Master series?
Yes, I have.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, Mike Shea really breaks down how to prep, and try and take a lot of the work out for you in those programs. He's actually got a Kickstarter.
I use his
right
Notion.
Now.
He's got like a Notion page. DM's Guild addiction thing going on here. So yeah.
Yeah, he's got a new Kickstarter out right now, so it's worth checking out. I think it comes with a workbook and all kinds of stuff. So
there's a big preview of it on his Patreon too, because that's where I am.
Is that where now? And it looks like Jenny has posted those links in the chat too. Okay, so another follow-up question for both. What is it that you know now that you wish you would have known when you got started to make things easier and better for you? So what's
organizational skills?
Yeah.
I'm not a natural at it, and I wish I had them.
Oh, I'm not either.
I guess valuing myself. I went in really undervaluing myself and then overworked and almost burnt out. Another one would time management, I guess. Yeah, just trying not to do that prep right before going into session. That's really stressful. So
yeah, especially even as a regular DM playing before the session, I used to spend hours prepping a game, and then they would go off the rails and we'd do something else. So it's like, how much do you need to prep?
Yeah.
And I think like valuing yourself, that's really key. And it took me a while for that too. It used to be somebody would send me a message like, can you do this time? I'm like, yes, I'll do whatever. And I was like running games at
I took everything.
And it took me a while before I was comfortable saying no, that really doesn't work for me. Like I felt like I couldn't say no.
Right.
It feels like that when you're starting out and you're building like your client list and your star ratings and things like that.
I think the same thing is in the writing industry. People who working on collaborations and writing for their people. It's like, I don't want to say no because I want to get my name out there.
Yeah.
I want to be on these projects, But over time, you've got to learn to say no and value your time too. So let's talk about really quick. I'm not going to ask for specific salaries, but have you increased your rates since you started doing this? Have you been able to increase how much you charge?
I did,
Hmm.
because I found my sweet spot, especially with I work a lot with a lot of neurodivergent kiddos. I max my classes out at 4 kids for most of my campaigns. Sometimes I'll go to 5 for certain groups or certain stories. But because I'm like, no, this is 4 only, you're paying for your spot in this, and this is like, this is going to be, a 9-month campaign or something like that. I'm comfortable. I raised my rates quite a bit when doing that. And it's like, if you're wondering why it's higher, then maybe I don't actually look at anybody else's because I can't handle competition. I don't like, it doesn't feel good to me. So I ignore everything anybody else does. But I feel like what I charge is probably way more, but I'm also like, your kid's also going to be one of 4, the end.
I haven't very much, and I have considered it. I did have some ongoing things, just a little bit. And I'm with you on the competition thing. I don't look at anything right now.
It's so
It's
stressful.
very stressful. I don't like. I've discovered I'm much happier only focusing on me. If I see another listing, I'm gonna get really
Anxious, like
the
just
I do get I probably not as many neurodivergent. I do get a few, but I think I've raised a little bit for my ongoing classes. Um, and I don't know. I think it's because so many of my students are returning. So sometimes I feel like in a little bit like owed to the families. But like it's a personal thing. And I think it's once again, know your worth. And if you are doing a 4-person campaign, that makes total sense to me.
Hmm.
And I would probably like, yeah, it's just it's gonna be different for everybody. And it's just whatever you're comfortable charging, I think, is what it comes
Yeah.
down to.
You really
yeah.
need,
And
I'm not you, so I don't know how you break it down, but I think you really need to think about how much time you're going to put towards prep, towards the
mhm.
game, and then towards the after prep or the follow up, and figure that out in an hourly rate, and quote that, because you don't want to shortchange yourself. And I know it's scary to think that, okay, well, if I raise my rates, I may lose customers, but if you're working so hard that you're wearing out, it's not worth it to you, I don't think.
Well, and when you've made a reputation and a connection with a certain amount of families,
Right.
like, yeah, I raised my prices. I'm running less sessions now, but I'm making the same amount as when I was running double the sessions,
That's
and
good.
I'm a lot less stressed.
Yeah.
So,
And reputation is big
mhm.
too. You've got people who are out there talking about you probably, or they know you or played with you. It's like Chris Perkins. Are you going to pay $200 to have him DM a game for you? I would do that just because it's Chris Perkins, and I've seen him run Games and Acquisitions Incorporated. And it seems like a fun game. Um, if you're delivering a good game, I think it's worth it. And we're talking about kid games here, but there's other people who want to do this for adults, and you'll see these posts on the 5e Facebook page. People saying, "Hey, I'm a professional DM," and people are like, "Why would you play? Why would anybody pay to play D&D when we can do it for free?" Well, that's not always the case because you don't always have a DM. You may not have a location to play, and if you're going to play virtually, why not reward the person who's putting all that time and energy into prepping the game for you?
Yeah. Well, and that
Because
whenever I hear people like, I'm not going to pay, I have somebody to do all that for me for free. It's like, value your DM a little, at least bring them snacks. Like, they work really, 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 really hard for you. like really
And
yeah,
hard.
and I will say this, and I'll just add one thing to it. That kind of it's it's not like because I'll get like some people like will be like, well, if you can do it, I can do it sort of situation. And that's probably you can maybe be an amazing pro DM. But understand, especially with kids, it's a skill set more to the kids than
hmm,
knowing like DM. Like if
Yeah.
you aren't great with kids, that's more important than almost the DM side of it. Like you have
hmm,
to
Yeah.
be able to handle and maintain and understand and really kind of address that. And I'm like, a lot of times I'm like, well, I've been playing for 30 years. I could totally do that. I'm like, but could
But,
you?
but how long have you been teaching? How many
Yeah.
children have you had to run interference with? like, Oh,
Oh, sorry.
Wait, which
one is
one?
We are bonding here.
Yeah, I'm missing it here.
Is it your goal to be teaching something specific with the session, like focusing on math with dice rolling or social skills with role playing, or more focused on simple play? That stuff is built in. We don't have to focus on math and things like that. It's built in.
And if you focus on it too much, you will actually lose them, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Because if you start making it like, okay, let's do math now, or let's do like, they're learning by not focusing in on the actual learning, in the sense of it's sort of like a lesson hidden. And like the minute you start talking to them, like, okay, let's do the problem. Like if they're having fun, they're going to be learning more than
Exactly.
if you lecture them, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Now,
That
going back real quick to people who say they could be a professional DM and the difference between adults and kids. As some DMs are really strict with how they run a game and they want it to go a specific way. And we all know that kids can really change that. As I was telling you before the show, I was running a 5-year-old through one of the games, and he was at a table with some teenagers and adults, and he wanted to have some little robots flying around him, and he ended up with a helm with an axe in the top, and so he would hit people with the axe in the helm. And you kind of go with it, even if they're not rolling the dice, they're kind of running around. You just kind of go with it and just let them have the fun, because everybody's having fun all the time. Hopefully when you're playing D&D, that's the whole idea of the game. But other DMs may not feel that same way when the kids are like, well, I want to do this. No, you can't do that. It's not in the rules. You kind of have to get off rules as written when you're DMing kids, I think.
I struggled with that when I went into live streaming, because I'm like, okay, which ones are the real rules and which ones are the ones that we made up with kids? Because oh no, so I'll catch myself breaking the rules so much for my adult streaming group, because I work with kids. I'm like, you want to do that? Okay, you do that. Tell me what it looks like,
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, a lot of times, especially with kids, we're getting kids that are neurodiverse. And that little bending of the rule is the difference between them leaving the game feeling like they've had a fun experience versus feeling kind of defeated in some way.
Yep.
And I don't think sticking to core raw is kind of worth that at the end of the day. Just opinion.
Agreed.
Yeah, a lot of times at my own table playing with adults, somebody will say, well, I want to jump on the table, jump up to the chandelier, do a flip off of it, and then attack. I don't even require a roll for that, because it's such a thematic thing, and you just see it in your head. I'm like, okay, you do that, and I'll roll for your attack. It just makes that whole thing.
If they take the time to describe it, I will. There's so many times when I'm like, no roll necessary. That was a beautiful description. Thank you for storytelling to me.
Yep, because they're adding to the story, exactly. And if they're the acrobatic type, sure. Now, if they were the little dwarf cleric with a dexterity of 8, well,
even better.
That might require a roll, though, Beth. That might require a roll. It may be a low DC, but
chaos.
Now, when you're doing your professional DMing, do you run modules, or do you do homebrew, or do you have to mix it up because it goes off the rails sometimes?
Both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Resounding yes to all of that.
Do you prefer to run modules or homebrew?
I like running modules. I like to have a box to work within, but then I like to. I wrote "She is the Ancient," right? I was like, I'm gonna take the box and I'm gonna cut it over here. And
that's the whole idea behind DM's Guild writing too. We're giving you an adventure, and you do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, I prefer modules. I think in the same sense, because it is kind of, and I like when I'm like for just beginning learning play thing, I sometimes like to do my own thing, like a little mini adventure that I might write. But for like, I like doing module campaigns, knowing they're going to go off the rails 100% completely. I have one group running around Avernus right now in a demon grinder called the Friendship Bus.
Nice.
And they will attack enemies by running them over and say, "We ran you over with the friendship bus."
That's
love
fantastic.
them.
That's fantastic. Hey, if you're watching the show right now, this is Jenny Loveday's Twitch channel. So just get down there and hit subscribe, like, share this with your friends, let people know about this show, let them know about this episode, because this episode is great. And I appreciate having both of you on the show. This is great. This is a great discussion. Another thing I want to talk about. So what's been your biggest accomplishment, both of you, doing this so far?
I mean, not related to D&D. I think it's just getting to the point where like my husband could go back to school and we could like this really cool, fun thing that we enjoy as a family became a way to support the family.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Perfect. Yep.
Same. Yeah. I took my 4 kids from a tiny 2-bedroom apartment and we're now in a 5-bedroom apartment, and my kids have space to breathe and room to play. So that feels like the biggest thing for me. All
Fantastic. Congratulations to both of you, by the way, for that. That's amazing. So Megan, you said you have 30 classes a week.
I mean, a lot of them are like repeat. So it's like, oh, like the same campaign, but in different variations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
How many hours do you D&D a day?
It depends on the day. So like Saturday, I went for about 12 hours. Yay. Today was a very light day. On Mondays, I will typically go about 5 hours. Tomorrow will be about, let's see, I think I have 5 is another 5-hour day. And then it picks up Thursdays through Saturday. I'm like super busy time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm basically booked up every day in the afternoon. So right now I have found that like with everything going on during the days, there isn't a whole lot during the school day. Basically, I am DMing usually about 3 or 4 till 8 or 9 or more, depends, give or take. Now I have some classes still run during the day. Some groups have like been together for a really long time that keep going.
That's cool though.
I have a couple of groups that are like they're bordering on their 2nd year together, like full on, and they just every time we get to a stopping point in one campaign, they're like, okay, so what are we doing next? And it just keeps we're just funneling over.
I've got 2 groups now where I'm like, okay, we're gonna start Wild Beyond the Witchlight now, I guess.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You finished that one. Time to okay.
That's what they're telling you, or that's what you're telling them?
Well, because they really like we've been playing in the Feywild for like a year. And so I was like, hey, and they just finished that up. And I'm like, very convenient. You want to continue in the Feywild? We got Wild Beyond the Witchlight now. And they're like, I'm in. So
If
now
I
we're
find-
doing it as 9th level characters, but
Yeah, that's a little being overpowered in the Fey.
I'm not familiar with the Feywild. Now I do have the Witchlight book. I just haven't read it yet, and I haven't really studied much with Feywild. But would you say that's kind of like Alice in Wonderland type of feel?
oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. That's kind of, I was watching Alice in Wonderland today, and I was like, I bet you this is what the Feywild's kind of like. So
Alice in Wonderland meets Wizard of Oz meets the Labyrinth, like all that. Yeah.
I've discovered
Labyrinth,
kids
yep.
really like the Feywild and they really like the Shadowfell.
Yes. Yep. Those are the 2
like
settings I run in exclusively.
Yes. I don't run them in exclusively, but I find myself there a whole lot. Like they'll find ways. Like I do run a Ravenloft campaign, and I'm doing a couple of the Witchlights right now, and yeah, they're very eager for those settings. But I end up in the Fey a lot in general, so it's just a place that somehow like, can we get there? I'm like, oh, okay, that's where we're going.
You find some mushrooms in the forest and whoosh, there.
But
Yeah,
like
there.
going back to the long-term groups, I will say like that a lot of times one of the reasons I have that many classes is I will find groups that are really bonded, and instead of ending the class, and I probably should, I just keep them going because like these kids are like so bonded to each other, and
Yep.
they become like friends in real life. And it's like I can't like almost bring myself to end the class when I knew I should.
Exactly. It's like, God, this should have ended a while ago, but how in the world can I take these children apart from each other. They're best friends now.
Exactly. So it's kind of like, okay, we're just gonna, and that's one of the reasons why I do have that many classes at the end of the day. It is just like, it's just, I'm not ending things necessarily when they should.
You can't quit. There's no quitting.
You have to quit sometime.
That's why I limit my long-term campaigns, and I try to stick with a lot more 10 episode arcs to episode. See, I've been streaming recently. 10 session stories and things like that. It's like, oh no, it did end. Sorry, that was all paid up front. It's done now.
That's good though. I like that idea. Whereas, you've got 10 sessions and
it's never enough.
Yeah.
So much story cutting.
We timed out on the Twitch stream. Is yours okay? We're back online. Sorry. My fault. What was I want to ask, like, what was the biggest hurdle to start this? What was the was it trying to acquire enough gamers to play or enough games to really start to make ends meet, or did that happen pretty quick?
For me, it happened really quick, and I like, you can go ahead and answer that free.
It happened for me pretty quick as well. It was more confidence, but I actually worked through that the same way I worked through a lot of D&D stuff. Was I cosplayed everything. So when I first got started working with kids in D&D, I would come to session dressed as like a bright blue tiefling or a bright green goblin, like the full cosplay, makeup, ears, contacts, all of it, every single session. And then I was able to like once I felt confident working with the kids in this, because I've been a teacher, but I've done like preschool stuff lots before, but this was new. And I was really nervous about it. So confidence. And then once I still cosplay a lot, but yeah, it helped. I'm good on that front now.
I think for me it was confidence, but in a different area. With kids, I've always kind of been confident. I don't know, the 4 kids thing. But we were comparing, we have the same amount of kids. It was great. But I think it was like the community, because I did start to get a little bit of, I'm not gonna say publicity, but like my name kind of started to kind of get out there just a tad bit. And I found like, you kind of get some pushback. You're paid DM, these are free. And then also, you hate to bring this up, but also female DM, and there are people that will immediately kind of have, so they're kind of crossing that hurdle and kind of making it like within the community, kind of like, yeah, I have a voice in place here.
Is that gatekeeping still within the, I'm going to call myself an older generation because I'm 50 years old and I grew up when it was just guys playing D&D. That was our group, and the girls didn't play D&D. Is that gatekeeping, is that still there within like the 30 and 20-year-olds, or do you think it's more in the older?
Older,
I think, for
yeah.
sure.
Okay.
So like my experience is a little different than yours, Megan, probably because like you said, you got into working with kids with it, and you had the publicity with like the online D&D community. I didn't actually join the online D&D community until this year. I was like doing D&D and stuff for the last several years, but I hadn't touched Twitter or anything until earlier this year. So it wasn't until 2021 that I was like, wow, people can be real jerks. Like, why? Like most people are very nice, but there are quite a few jerks. And I'm like,
I think that's, and I tend to be the one who will mentally kind of focus on the jerks more than the,
it's like 100 nice things, and then that one person, and you're like, like, why? Yeah same.
You're not missing too much from social media stuff at times. It can be nasty.
And that's one reason I kind of lay low on it, and 100%
oh yeah, me too. Yep. I treat my social media as a piece of the business. I don't say things out of turn, and I don't try to pick on anyone for any certain reason. So we are getting close to the end of the show. Both of our participants here do get a $20 donation in their name. Megan, can you tell me about the donation that I made for you?
The Camp Smile, it's a camp for special needs individuals where I live. They do 1 week each summer for different age groups. It goes from 5 all the way up to full adulthood. Campers have one-on-one counselors. It's overnight. It's kind of an amazing experience. My boys go there, and it is like this one thing they look forward to every year more than anything. My our youngest just started going there, but our oldest, like, he'll start asking about it March, and it isn't until June or
That's
July
great, though.
typically. So
That's great for them to have something like that to look forward to every year. Yeah. And then Beth, another donation to Jasper's Game Day for you.
Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely.
I'll get that one done. I've done Megan's, but I'll do yours after the show. And where can people find you on social media or websites? Megan, do you have a site that you want to promote?
I have a website, a Our School link, and then I also have a Facebook business page. I tend to do a lot through there as well.
And I met you on the 5e Facebook page.
Yes, you did.
Yep.
I've made some oddly good connections there.
There you go. Sometimes you can.
Most people are nice. You just,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead. Where do you want me to put the link in the? Yeah. Cool.
And then Beth, where can people find you?
I'm everywhere on the internet at It's Beth the Bard. So that is like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Ko-Fi. I'm forgetting about.
It's Ko-Fi and not coffee. I thought
It's
it was
probably coffee. Everyone corrects me, but I don't like it. It's Ko-Fi looks correct to me.
Right.
Ko-Fi sounds way fancier.
Right? Thank you. I also have a website, beththebard.com. It's usually got like my streaming schedule and things, but I haven't updated it in about a month or so. But you can find information about like my book and everything there, and my show.
She is the Ancient.
She is the Ancient, a gender bent curse of Strahd. Yeah, there's a corresponding show on Twitch right now through Satine Phoenix's Gilding Light channel.
Really?
We are 4 episodes away from concluding the whole series. So
wow. That's
yeah,
amazing.
but it's all on YouTube.
That brings up my current character. I am playing a Blade Singer Tortle in Rime of the Frost Maiden, and so he's a wizard with a 17 AC who's wielding a longsword. So but he uses the voice of Christopher Walken. Okay.
Yes.
So wow, we are in Icewind Dale. I've still got to work on that a little bit, but
I like it a lot.
Yeah. I am Jeff Stevens. I'm on Twitter at @JCorvinStevens, one of the worst Twitter handles in the world. You can find my website, jeffstevensgames.com, and I have a Kickstarter launching in about a week. Potbellied Kobold's Guide to Villains and Layers, and it's basically like a monster book of NPCs with some layers in it and custom stat blocks. It's really pretty cool. Beth, I've recruited Beth to write for that, and I'm excited to see what she comes up with. But have a lot of really cool writers from that project. Jenny Loveday is writing for that project. Jenny D, Ed Greenwood, Justice Armand, Anthony Joyce, Alan Patrick, Alan Tucker, RP Davis. Yeah, the list keeps growing because I have problems spending money. I see an art image and I want something written, and I'm like, well, I'm already writing a lot, and so I need somebody else to write something. And so I just keep asking more people to write, and eventually I've got to quit doing that because the Kickstarter hasn't even launched yet, and I'm spending all this money. So yeah, that should launch in about a week or so, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Thanks, Jenny. Appreciate that. I want to thank both of you again for being on the show. This was an outstanding discussion. You both seem like great people, and I love what you're doing with kids and with D&D. You are creating the next generation of D&D players and professional DMs.
It's so exciting to think about.
It is. It's really cool.
I just sent one of my groups, one of my kids just went off to college, and I'm like,
oh wow.
I've had a few of those.
I know, I was like, my baby, you're not mine, but you are.
That's crazy. How long had you been working with them?
This particular student, at least the last 9 months or so.
Wow,
was like-
that's really cool though.
The
And
hard
now
one
they'll
for
go to
me-
college. They'll start their own
and
game.
they're starting their own D&D
Yeah,
group and
yeah.
stuff. I'm like,
Well, I had one student that left my campaigns, and he was like, because it's like, because when they leave, they kind of leave a note, this big long note that he was going to go DM now, and then he wanted to be able to stay in contact so I could give him DM tips so he could DM his own group, but he wanted to kind of be in charge of his own, and like yeah, so that's kind of when they kind of start to sprout their wings of D&D and kind of move on and all of that.
yeah. Yeah, everyone can hear you this time.
That's the voice of God, everyone.
Everyone can hear me now.
Everyone hears me.
From the background. Just like, that's how I feel too when I teach like D&D to brand new people at conventions, and then they come back like the next year and they're like, how do I run the D&D for you as a volunteer? I feel like I owe you this. And I'm like, you do not, but I love you, my baby, my child.
It's really interesting to like see like somebody go from their first, and like I love it when I get students that are like, remember my first character was you when I was like this, and it's like 3 years later and they've gone through so many characters, and it's like they're recounting campaign stories and all of that, where they're sharing their adventure like and notes, and like I have certain things that are kind of unique to my game, and I know that Beth does too, that like I have an ongoing joke about something called spaducks, because kids get scared of spider pictures. I have giant spiders, but I replace them with duck pictures and I call them spaducks. And it's like, remember the spaduck? And we would get that as, and like it's just a thing and it becomes canon. And
Yeah.
I feel kind of bad for some other teachers on our school if they ever have to deal with some of the creature creations I have given my students, like the barred rat is one. I found a picture of a rat playing French horn and I made it a canon
Nice.
animal.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing.
I've just ended up making really monstrous humans that are mean to animals because those are the only things that most of my students will fight.
Oh yes.
So
It's like if you give them like a bunch of like really like these, like that's one of the early encounters I had, was like 2 giant spiders coming out, and I wanted the counter to be where they have to kind of calmly not fight them to teach compassion, but yeah, that didn't thing I had to work on. It turns out everybody wants a giant spider pet, and that's a total thing. Kids will
Yep.
just tame everything. Everything is a figure pet. Like a
And-
spectator comes out of a tree. That's my friend.
In a lot of my adventures, I enjoy writing pets into them. I enjoy writing stuff that a character could actually pick up as a pet, whether it be a dead horse or a porcupine or something like that. I just think it's something that they could take away from that adventure and keep with them. And sometimes it works, sometimes they just kill it. Hey.
I tortured my husband once when I was a shepherd druid, and I think it's my students rubbed off on me, where I would animal handle everything and end up like 10 pets in a campaign.
I'm the same way now. When I don't actually get the opportunity to play very much, but when I do, I'm like, oh, that evil slime monster symbiote thing is now my friend. I charm beast on it. It's mine. Like,
Oh, the style of play does kind of rub off on you. It's eventually like you carry it over and it's just like, okay, that's just how I am. It's the new me.
And that can make a DM's day right there, or break it, one of the two.
or break it.
Well, it's about time to wrap up. I want to again thank you both for being on the show. Great discussion, great people. Anything you want to say before we leave?
Thanks for watching.
Exactly.
Thank you. And I'm just proud that I did not totally geek out over you guys, because I genuinely love the stuff you guys have written, and I'm like, been like the past week, I'm gonna be on a show with them, I'm gonna do something with them. This is so cool.
I'm over
just a
here like,
person.
oh my gosh, Megan,
Yep, that's how I was
she's
too.
been
I
working
was
with
like,
kids longer than me, and this stuff, she's like the goddess, the patron goddess of like D&D with kids, right there.
yep.
I feel like that moment like in Step Brothers, where they're like, are you my new best friend? Because we just like all our
Absolutely.
experiences are so on par with each other.
Hey, you guys could do a DM duo. Do a
Yeah.
master's class.
Just, you know, like, I mean,
Well,
I
with
would,
that-
but yeah.
Well, with that, we will sign off and say thank you, everybody, for watching the show. Until next time, may your dice rolls all be critical hits or natural ones, whichever you want them to be.